Welcome to Think at Heart. I'm Scott Goodfellow. This is Ben Hart.
Hello.
Ben, feels like it's been a minute since we've done one of these.
It
Because
has. It has.
Yeah, a lot has changed. A lot has
Yes.
changed over that period of time. One of the things is we're live from the Hart Investment Group Corporate Studios,
You got it. In the
also
office.
known as National Bank Financial, 50 O'Connor, Ottawa, Ontario. What's up with the move? It looks like I'm actually sitting, like I got a green screen behind me, and it's like, oh, I decided to use like a cubicle setting, which I don't know how inspiring that is to anybody. You got the nice one with the Peace Tower and everything behind you.
Can we see it here?
Yeah, that's real.
Looking
That's-
nice. Looking
That's
nice.
that's our setup here. Yeah. So, what do you think? Excited to be back in the office?
Excited to be back. Yeah, it definitely changed from the old basement.
I know.
Commute though at this time of the day, there's nobody around, so it's still pretty
Yeah.
quiet down here. What do you think?
Yeah, I put in for the request for the wood paneling to be installed behind me here. Like, who uses filing cabinets anymore? Like, really, everything's
It's empty.
digitally. So there's nothing in here. I got like some crackers in there. That's about it. Right? So,
Exactly.
I got crackers and chocolate milk from like January or something like that. Anyway, starting to smell out here. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, so yeah, what's been going on? It's been like a month since we've done one of these things, so a lot's changed in the markets.
Yep.
Why don't we start by you kind of giving an update with where we're at with things, you think, as far as the market's concerned?
Yeah, for sure. So I think we've had September was one of the more rockier months we've seen in a long time. So we had S&P was down about 4.5% for the month of September. So it was the first real kind of correction in broad equities for a year and a half or so. So I think that probably shook people a little bit from a surprise perspective. That's caught a lot of attention. There's a lot of other things going on in the world, but I think that market correction probably surprised people the most. I know we're going to cover a bunch of stuff today, which I think has also impacted markets too. But I think the correction has been the surprise. Tech stocks rolling over a bit, 10-year bond yields moving higher, gold's under pressure. So lots going on in the market. So we can cover a few of those things, I think, as we go through here.
Okay, yeah, it's been a bit of a, like you said, a bit of a rocky September, that's for sure. But glad to be in October. All right. Well, what do you want to start with? I mean, there's a lot of topics there. So what do you want to start with?
Well, I know we talked about coming into this. We could talk about maybe touching on some things with Cathie Wood. I think that'd be a worthwhile topic to cover right now, and we'll go through with some of the other things.
Yeah.
Crypto, inflation, and I want to touch about central bankers. Lots of bad actors the last couple of weeks have had to step down for trading, kind of insider trading type scandals that I want to touch on.
Yeah, a lot of bad actors out there. In the age of Netflix, a lot of bad actors.
Exactly.
Okay, we'll start with Cathie Woods. Yeah, I was listening that she's the first famous investor to be judged on her trades daily, which is pretty much true. That doesn't normally happen. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I think that I can't think of any other place that discloses their trades on a daily basis. So, you can go to her website, you can subscribe. I do it every day at kind of 10, 11 at night. I get a summary of the trades across all the ETFs she manages, buys and sells, full disclosure, position size, how many she bought. It's really unbelievable.
Yeah, for the lack of a better term, that's ballsy, right? Like, could you might think back across your 20-year career, or do you think there's periods where maybe you wouldn't be comfortable doing that every day?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think that it takes a ton of guts from her side. She's also been quite vocal in the world that she's trying to build the first publicly traded venture capital firm. So, when's the last time you saw a venture capital firm disclose anything they do?
Yeah, exactly.
Let alone on a daily basis.
Yeah, exactly. So you think she'll be successful at that?
So I think she will, because I think that she's got enough following right now. Her ARC does a ton of research around kind of future where technology is going, heavily tilted towards the kind of Web 3.0 that we talk about often. And so I think there's enough people that believe that that is going to be important and that's going to be a big part of how the world evolves.
Hmm.
She's having a hard time um, from a market perspective. But as I say, you're running a venture capital firm. Like if you run it from the perspective that you're a typical buyout period for these venture capitals are somewhere between 5 and 10 years, right? So she's buying some of these companies with a 5 to 10 year outlook. And so, I think as long as she continues to tell that story and people believe that these things are going to happen, she'll be successful. Um, it's got to be a tough grind for her some days, but she seems to have a lot of confidence and conviction, and some serious institutional investors that believe that she's taking things in the right direction.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, definitely keep an eye on that for sure.
yeah.
All right. Well, I try not to rush through that to get to the next topic because I would love to talk about crypto. So, where's that? Where are we at with crypto these days?
Yeah, so I mean, certainly crypto is integral in Cathie's view as well, right? So as she thinks about how things evolve, I mean, if we think about, we haven't really talked about crypto in maybe a month and a half. There's been a million things that have changed since then.
Yeah.
The price is up probably 25-30% since then. So we've had price appreciation again. Looks like we had kind of that freak out liquidity event earlier this year where a lot of the leverage was taken out of the system. We've had Gary Gensler come in, who's the head of the SEC, who used to be at MIT, he did a course in blockchain, so people thought he would come in and approve that Bitcoin right out of the gate. Then we've had Janet Yellen, who's the head of Treasury Secretary, talk about how this is a bad thing in the world. And, so they're really trying to, I think, kind of weave the narrative, the central planners.
Mhm.
Gary Gensler came out last night and said, we won't ban it. We don't think it's right to ban it. So we got to find a way to make it work for people.
Mhm.
And then we had China, like since we've recorded, we had China ban it again. And so since China banned Bitcoin, it's up about 15% since then. So, I think obviously on our weekly roundups, we talk about this. But the last couple of times that China's banned over the last couple of cycles, Bitcoin's actually gone up through that phase. And so I know we're going to go through a couple of slides there shortly, and we'll show a chart on kind of when's the best time to own it, and it typically is this part of the calendar year.
Mhm.
But yeah, tons have happened. You've had lots of new, I'd say, cryptos come online with like Solana gaining a lot of traction. Um, Cardano still is, and for the people that follow the space pretty well, Facebook's been talking about relaunching their DM, their coin, and so I think the central planners of the world are worried about what Facebook's going to do because they got 3 billion users.
Mhm.
That's a pretty big country.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I think one of the things to really note is, yeah, when China banned it, right? Everybody was concerned that there's going to be a big drop, but it actually rose in value. Why? How? Why would you think that would happen?
Well, you've had China kind of go backwards many times on many things, and it looks like they're scared about what's happening right now, and they want to control money flow each
Mhm.
way. I think part of it is that they want to control. I think the other part of it is they want to launch their central bank digital currency.
Mhm.
So they want to launch the yuan digitally. They want people to start using that, and so I think that that was part of it. I think if the bigger risk really would be to see like the U.S. shut it down.
Mhm.
That would be a pretty dramatic event. And so I think that the world was like, okay, well, it was China. People are still going to get around the rules. You can't outright ban it. Obviously, there's a lot of things that are illegal in China that continues to happen.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
money flowing here and there is going to continue.
Mhm.
And, I think if the US and Europe and a lot of these other big developed nations are saying, we approve of it, including Canada. I mean, Canada's been a leader in allowing crypto as long as it's regulated.
Mhm.
So I think because the rest of the world has said, we're fine with it, we just need some rules and regulation around it. I think you've seen people say, take a bit of a break and say, China is trying to control their narrative, and we're going to find a way to make it work, these other countries.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I think Canada's done a good job at regulating it, and the companies that distribute it and hold it right for like the coin squares have done a good job. I think just saying, yep, I'm going to work with CRA. We're going to work with all the regulating bodies so that they don't have that pushback, right? So they want to, they see the broader vision, which is, we have to get it regulated in order to get mass adoption, right? And that's really the next step for this, right? Like people are not really trading or not buying things with it, not transacting with it every day, right? So
Yeah.
it seems like that really, in order to go to the next level, it seems to me like that's where it needs to get to, don't you?
Yeah, so I think it's still pretty early days in that. People don't totally understand
Oh
how
yeah.
to how to use it from a utility, I guess, perspective. And so
Mhm.
you've seen some of the credit card companies come out and allow you to
Mhm.
do that. I know we
Mhm.
had recorded a podcast there a couple of weeks ago talking about NFTs and its uses. So
Mhm.
there's some good things in there that will come out about how people are using it now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not like it's not we're nowhere near mass adoption, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that it'll be interesting to see if that's the direction it goes, though, right? So
Mhm.
the kind of thinking is a lot of people still think it's digital gold, right, as opposed
Mhm.
to a currency.
Right.
So if this thing ends up, if Bitcoin, the other currencies we can talk about, but if Bitcoin ends up being digital gold, then maybe it just becomes an asset in your portfolio and you don't actually use it like a currency.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point for sure. But
So,
yeah, but you'd have to think there'd be something else that comes out that we use as digital currency, or maybe not.
well, I think there's probably lots of them. Like
Yeah.
I think that we probably need to rethink a little bit how currencies work.
Mhm.
Right now, the whole premise of Bitcoin was how do we put ourselves in a position to not be centrally controlled like
Mhm.
currency is today, right? So, today currency is controlled by the central banks and the governments. And so right now, the whole kind of that original Satoshi paper was around how do we make this a decentralized world. And
Right.
so if we become a decentralized world where the central banks will fight that tooth and nail,
Mhm.
then yeah, we're going to have multiple currencies that don't exist today.
Right.
Instead of having the Canadian dollar, maybe we have something else in Canada, like maybe it's not Ethereum or Solana or Cardano or Ripple or
Mhm.
Dogecoin.
Mhm.
Um, maybe it's something else, but it's an alternative currency that's allowed to work within the system. And so I think it's an alternative asset. And, I think maybe we need to rethink money a little bit. And instead of in your bank account, right now you transact in Canadian dollars, right? You get paid in Canadian dollars, you spend your money in Canadian dollars, you live here, but maybe what happens within, your bank account, you get paid in Canadian dollars, but then you can say, okay, I'm gonna chop some of that out, and we'll put 25% in Bitcoin, 25% in ETH, and 50% in CAD,
Mhm.
and be able to use those currencies as and how you see fit.
Mhm.
And so, like, I think you probably get an evolution where, right now bank accounts are like way over here, and you get kind of these MetaMask wallets that's way over here. somewhere in the middle is probably where you get to the mass adoption that you're looking for.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So might be a good time to throw up that the crypto chart that you were talking about there before.
Sure. Yeah.
Since we're just off the cuff here on this podcast, I'm thinking, all right, we just like to riff. I don't know, is your light set up at all in there?
My lights, I know, not great. Don't have enough USB outlets.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Next time.
I know we're dark. I know we're dark today, but
you have the super dark skin today, and I have like the super white skin today. I don't know what's going on. Well, I do know what's going on. I need to get out of the basement more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but yeah.
So we're gonna get because I only got one screen going today as well. So let's see if we can make this happen.
We just go with the flow here. We just go with the flow.
Yes, sir. Let me know if you can see it. Is it popped up there?
No.
No. Okay. All right. Let's try again here. All right. I think we just didn't share it properly. That's all.
There we go.
There we go. Can we see it now?
That's a good looking screen.
All right, we'll go backwards this time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Oh, so that was 2 weeks ago that we had the crypto slide. Anyways, okay. we can talk on that, but we look at the kind of the calendar year performances of crypto, and we're gonna get that slide up near the end. I'll spend some time going through it as we talk here, but you get the last quarter of the month has historically been kind of that best period, the best phase of time. And so for anyone that follows Real Vision and Raul Paul as well, I'd suggest if you don't and you're interested in learning about kind of the technicals and the charts, Raul's put up some pretty interesting charts about overlaying where Ethereum and Bitcoin traded through the different cycles. He uses kind of a log chart looking at how these things work. And, historically, we've had the best period has been the last quarter of the year, and we're kind of getting a lineup from a technical perspective that we could see a reasonable breakout here. So, I'd say crypto is certainly an interesting thing to look at and talk about. The reason I put up this chart, though, and which we talked about last week, Scott, as you remember, is, remittances is essentially how much money comes back into the different countries once people have left and they're trying to help their families and friends back in their home countries. And so, the reason why this one was important and kind of related to Bitcoin is that El Salvador has given people Bitcoin wallets and set them up and really got them started on using this. And right now, I think they've reached about 60% of the population have actually activated those wallets and are going to consider starting to use this. But if we look at El Salvador, 24% of the money that comes into the country is in inflows as a percentage of GDP in El Salvador. So, this is a massive amount of money coming back into these countries. Right now, on average, wire transfers globally are around 6.83%. So for every dollar that comes into these countries, 7% goes towards the banks and the intermediaries. And we talked about this on our roundup, but you already know how much it costs to send money by Bitcoin, right?
Yep.
Right.
Zero.
Exactly. Zero. So when you think about the massive amount of money that can go back into the country, back into the population, El Salvador, where people think it's just a small kind of non-event, we look at right now, like they're giving away a lot of money that's not helping their people, and so they've made a decision that very tactical based on what's happening in the world, trying to put their people and population in a better position to continue to do well and make money. And Bitcoin's just the vessel for them to do that. I mean, it could have been anything. but they've looked at it and say, okay, well, we have the ability to transact. The other point, which I think is important as well too, it takes 3 or 4 days in order to send money from one country to another, and Bitcoin, as you know, transfers within seconds to minutes to in a worst case scenario, it's an hour if you got a bad internet connection.
Yeah, that's amazing, right? When you look at things like that, like, the cost and the amount of time it takes are really the two biggest value for people, right? So, when you start looking at those values, right, then you got to think, hey, definitely this is going to change, right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And as the regulations come in, I listen to a lot of guys talk about this, some experts in the space and regulation and timing. We've probably reached that phase where we're, we're probably going to be a little bit more grindy from rules and regulations. These things are probably going to take a couple years before you get mainstream adoption.
Hmm.
Um, but the good news is that the regulators, I think, are keen to pay attention to it, particularly in the U.S. Canada's, as you know, has already said that you want to participate in the Canadian market. Here's the rules you need to follow. If you don't like them, then you leave. So there's lots of Canadian companies, as you referenced, CoinSquare and some of the others that have come out and say, we agree with you. Let's play ball, and we'll continue to move on.
Right. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Okay, what else you got for us, Ben?
Well, we might as well keep going on these charts since we have them open here.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, we've talked about this before, but I get tons of questions about what's happening in the real estate market. And so, as a lot of people probably read the news, some people still read the newspaper. But this one caught my eye. It says Peter makes 94,000. He owns 2 condos and wants a third in Toronto. I think that as you read this, probably as an outsider, you think, "Wow, this is great. This guy's doing amazing job on growing his real estate investment portfolio." And at the same time, when I read this, I look at it, I'm like, how is this actually possible? And so I think typically on somebody that makes $94,000, the most amount of mortgage that he would qualify for is 470,000. So, owning 3 condos with 470,000, yeah, I
Mhm.
guess maybe it's possible if he's got a ton of down payment in all of those, but
Mhm.
pretty unlikely when I look at it. And so, it's manic. It seems like a bit of a mania. And another chart which I'd put up in one of my daily notes was, Toronto has more cranes than Chicago, New York, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Arizona. Like, you got massive builds still happening there,
Mhm.
and people's incomes haven't kept up to the levels that you need in order to continue to buy these properties.
Right.
You have any thoughts?
Yeah, how do you think he would get the mortgages for that? I mean, there's a lot to consider, right? Like, does he already have leases set up with the tenants, and he's got long-term cash flow and equity in his other properties, stuff like that. There's obviously lots to consider, but just in general, how would they typically qualify for a mortgage if there was that? It wouldn't be through the banks. It would have to be like private mortgages and whatnot, wouldn't it?
Yeah, typically it'd have to be private mortgages, I would think. And if you look at the stats, there is lots of for the first time that I've ever seen in my career, they've been I've seen some rumblings about fourth mortgages on properties, if you can believe it.
Mhm.
So, there's lots of lenders willing to give out money because they can probably borrow. Lenders can probably borrow at 1, 2%, and if they lend it out to you at 6, 8, 10, 12%, and they do that for enough people, they spread their risk around. So yeah, you'd likely have alternative lenders. Again, unless you had a ton of down payment in all of these, and even the income from the properties, you only take 50% of that income to qualify for your debt score.
Mhm.
So, but it would be hard for me to get my head around thinking, this guy owns 4 properties or 3 properties in Toronto with taxes and mortgage payments. Like it's assuming he doesn't have any other debt or any other expenses. Maybe you can make those numbers work, but got to be alternative lenders saying we're willing to give you the money at 10, 12%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the risk is if the rental market dries up, right? Then yeah, he's stuck holding the bag for sure.
Or property prices stall, right? Like the people that, heavens forbid, they actually go down. But if they stall, you can't keep refinancing to pay for these things.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'd say that the good news, though, from a rental perspective, is typically in an economic and housing downturn, rental is super strong. So you can continue to rent as long as you can make the payments.
Right.
Yeah, it tends to be strong in the rental market, but lots of attention around real estate in Canada because it's such a big percentage of GDP right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It probably, if you look at uh, like the tertiary businesses and secondary businesses from real estate, and you're probably north of 60% of GDP.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. What else you got for us?
Last one. This is a little bit more technical, but it's a
Whoa.
PC deflator. So, this is something we don't need to go in too much. I think the frame of reference right now is more important than the details of it. So, if you look at kind of the mid 70s, some people probably remember what happened through that time frame. We had inflation kind of running hot, interest rates low, and then we had a bit of a run up where interest rates started to rip, inflation slowed. The reason it's important to pay attention to, because what happened through that period in the 70s is we had a really rough economic backdrop. We had some painful economic periods, but we also had markets doing things that weren't very fun, where we had bonds selling off, and we had stocks selling off at the same time. So, if you got a typical 60-40 portfolio and you don't have any other alternative assets in your portfolio, you're bound to have a pretty rough period. So, that's why crypto, commodities, some of these other things, gold, are important to pay attention to from an asset allocation perspective. And we've gone really far away from that. If you look at a typical balanced fund at any of the institutions that sell them, there's not a lot of alternative assets in there, not a lot of gold, crypto, or commodities. This is important to think about what could potentially happen in just a standard portfolio. So it's important to pay attention and look a little bit at history on this one.
Gotcha.
I'm going to stop sharing that.
Well, I think we have time for maybe one more topic before you become a complete shadow.
Holy jeez, look at that, eh?
Hey, the Peace Tower looks amazing.
Amazing.
Hey, as time goes on here, the backdrop looks amazing, and you look worse.
I look like I'm hiding in the shadows.
Exactly. So we'll get that sorted out for next week for sure.
Yes,
yes. But yeah, so let's do that. Let's give us one more hot pressing topic here, and then we'll wrap her up.
Yeah, well, look, I hate people that try to hide and hide from the rules and try to get away with their power. And so the topic I have to leave with is what the central banks have been doing. We've had 3, potentially 4 Fed chairs that the different banks have to step down. And so if you think about the U.S. as they have these different kind of local banks where Chair Powell is what everyone hears, kind of head of the central bank. But then we have like head of the Boston Fed, head of the Chicago Fed, head of the Atlanta Fed. And so we've had these guys come out and for whatever reason have to come out and disclose that they were trading futures. Like some of these guys, like Rosengren, was trading futures in equity markets the day before there's a Fed decision on what's happening with interest rates. Like this guy is a multi-millionaire, and he's going and trading futures, like $1 million future contracts, in front of their decision making. That's like the CEO of a big company coming out buying calls the day before a major announcement on the stock market. Like this guy would be fired, potentially even go to jail on this, and certainly pay massive fines. So Rosengren, Kaplan, and even Powell himself traded in muni bonds in advance of a meeting he was going to do. And so, like these guys, it's like this is nothing more frustrating and make me sick that these guys, are worth 20, 30, 40 million dollars. Like some of them, Rosengren's, I think, even close to being a billionaire, and he's trading futures contracts and taking advantage of his position. So, I think you get a pretty material uprising with people around the financial circle saying, this is unacceptable behavior. And these guys should not only have the ability to step down, which they've done, as they should be fired. And, we want people like Vogler that'll come in, that can come in. They're not swayed and influenced by their history, that can come in and make independent decisions. I hope that happens everywhere. But this, what's happened in the last quarter has been really sad to see. And it's been frustrating as anything.
Yeah, I think I heard this morning that they're gonna start an insider trading investigation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll happen. It's too public now that they're just gonna get away with it.
Yeah.
Oh, I say that, and I mean people have gotten away with worse. That's for sure. It's usually never the big names that go down for it, right?
That's right. How many people went to jail in the 2008 subprime crisis?
It was one, right?
Yeah, it was one.
Some middle manager just took the fall.
Random dude who had nothing to do with it, that probably signed his name on something he shouldn't have.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully the big dogs paid him and his family out well for taking that fall. I think he's still in jail. But yeah, all right. Well, way to end on a high note. Hey, just talking about greed and corruption.
Yeah. It's something I can't let go because I hate seeing it.
Yeah, of course. Well, it feels good, Ben. Hey, it feels good to be back in the office, back on the podcast world, and
that's it.
I mean, we've been stacking interviews like crazy, so we're getting ready to launch those more consistently. We have a lot of awesome stuff planned for the next few months here, so. Thanks for everybody for tuning in, and remember, Hart Investment Group, National Bank Financial. You can find us at hartinvestmentgroup.ca and on all social medias. Ben's got a great LinkedIn and Twitter handle, so just follow him, Ben Hart. And that's it. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, nice
we'll try to get you a light for next time, so you don't
disappear.
End up like. You look like Peter Pan's shadow right now.
I'm really here. Promise.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye.